The school's parking lot was full. More than 50 students waiting for transportation, talking, playing with their cell phones. No one paid attention at first. Only when the girl's voice cut through the noise, some looked. She tried to walk away. He retreated to the red brick wall, but the three of them had already closed the circle. One pushed, another pulled out his backpack. The third just watched, smiling. "Stop!" she screamed. No one moved. The backpack fell to the ground, notebooks spread. She tried to catch it, but one of them kicked it all away. Laughs, some nervous, others cruel. The rest of the group just watched, backpacks down, averted looks. Steps back, then came the first slap. It wasn't strong, but it was public. Her head turned to the side. The hair covered his face for a second. When she looked up again, there was something different there. It wasn't anger. It was the clear, cold, devastating realization that no one was going to help. One of the bullies grabbed her arm. She pulled. He pulled harder. The other held the other arm. She screamed again, but now her voice came out broken, almost breathless. "Someone, please." Silence. 50 people. None moved. The third bully, the one who was only watching, finally approached. He didn't hit. He just laughed, high, as if it were all a performance. And then he pulled her hair. The girl tried to hold his hand, but he pulled harder, forcing her head to tilt back. Tears flowed. Not physical pain, of pure humiliation. One student filmed for 3 seconds. Then he put his cell phone away and turned his face. That's when someone whispered, "Someone has to do something." But no one did. Violence grows fast when fear dominates the group. And there, in that parking lot, fear was on every face. Except for the three who still held the girl. They knew they could go on, and they continued. The push came from behind. She didn't see it. He didn't have time to prepare. Her body was thrown forward with force. His knees hit the rough asphalt first, then the elbows, then the side of the face. The sound was dry, unique, final. For 2 seconds, no one said anything, nor the bullies, nor those who watched. The entire parking lot held its breath, as if everyone knew at the same time that something had changed. She didn't get up. He stood there, on his side, motionless, her hair scattered on the gray floor. One of his hands was still stretched out, as if he had tried to break the fall, but he couldn't. One of the bullies took a step back, then another. The smile was gone. He looked at the other two, waiting for some sign, some order. Nothing came. "Get up," said one of them, trying to sound firm. She did not answer. "Hey," raises, silence. That's when the trickle of blood appeared, thin, dark, running slowly down the asphalt, coming from her temple. The liquid followed a straight line to a crack in the ground, where it stopped. Someone let out a muffled scream. A girl put her hand to her mouth and turned her face. 2 boys retreated to the wall. Another simply ran away. But most remained at a standstill. Property. Watching. One of the bullies ducked, hesitant. He reached out, almost touched her shoulder, but he backed down at the last second. His body was rigid, his hands trembled slightly. He knew, everyone knew, the line had been crossed. And when you cross certain lines, there is no turning back. There is no excuse that erases. There is no... It was unintentional. What happened, happened. And now, there, on the cold floor of a school parking lot, a girl lay unconscious as dozens of witnesses chose silence. The bully who pushed took another step back. Then he turned and started walking. Fast, almost running. The other 2 followed. No one tried to stop it. The girl remained there, alone. The blood is still flowing. Weak, almost imperceptible breathing. And the parking lot, full of people, has never seemed so empty. The 3 of them walked away quickly. They didn't run, but they walked in a hurry, shoulders tense, downcast eyes. One of them was still laughing, but it was a nervous, forced laugh that died in the air before it reached the others. "She was asking," said one, trying to justify it. No one answered. They disappeared behind the school bus parked in the corner of the parking lot. The engine was still running. The lighthouse illuminated part of the scene. The yellow light hit the asphalt, revealing the dark stain of blood, the scattered notebooks, the backpack turned sideways, and the girl, still on the ground. More than 40 people were still there, some leaning against cars, others sitting on the curb. Some still held their cell phones in their hands, but no one else filmed. No one looked directly anymore. A girl whispered to her friend next to her, "We shouldn't do anything." Her friend looked away. "It's not our problem." An older boy, with a backpack on his back and a headset around his neck, took 2 steps towards the fallen girl, hesitated. He looked around. No one accompanied him. He waited another 3 seconds. Then he went back to where he was. The comfort of omission is easy when you're not alone. When everyone chooses not to act, no one carries the blame alone. The responsibility is diluted, disappears, and what remains is only the shared silence of those who saw it, but preferred not to see it. The school bus let out a low rumble. The driver finally got off. He saw the scene, frowned, picked up the radio attached to his belt. "I need help here in the parking lot. There is a student on the floor." His voice was firm, but tired, as if he already knew that this was going to happen one day, as if he had seen signs, warnings, small cruelties that were never taken seriously, until they turned this around. He approached the girl, knelt next to her. He checked his pulse. It was still beating, weak, but it hit. He took off his own coat and placed it under her head, carefully. Then he looked back at the motionless crowd. Did anyone see what happened? No one answered. He asked again. Silence. The driver shook his head. Not anger, of disappointment. He had seen it before. Cowardice in a group, the fear of standing out, the choice to protect oneself, even if it means abandoning those in need. Injustice thrives when it meets no resistance. And there, in that parking lot lit by a yellow beacon, she thrived in silence. The sound of firm footsteps cut through the low murmur of the parking lot. It was not a hurry. It wasn't racing. It was something different. Measured steps. Heavy. The kind of walk that carries intention in every movement. Some students turned their heads. Others just felt the change in the air. He was coming from the other side of the parking lot. A tall man, broad shoulders, dark leather jacket. He walked in a straight line, as if he knew exactly where to go. His face was still in shadow, but something in his posture made the entire group fall silent. The bus driver looked up. He recognized the figure. He said nothing. He just walked away, giving space. The man continued walking. He went through the groups of students. No one spoke to him. No one moved. It was as if an invisible line had been drawn, and everyone knew instinctively that they should not cross it. He stopped 3 meters from the girl on the ground. It stood still, looking. He did not duck immediately. He just noted. The backpack turned over. The notebooks are scattered around. The blood on the asphalt. And then he saw the jacket, navy blue, with a small embroidery on the shoulder. He knew that jacket. I had bought it 6 months ago. I remembered the day. I remembered the store. I remembered how she had smiled when she tried it. His jaw locked. His shoulders stiffened. His hands, loose at his sides, closed slowly until they became fists. But he didn't scream. It didn't run. He just breathed. Bottom. Slow. As if he were mentally counting to 10 or even 100. He took 2 more steps. He stopped next to her. He knelt down. His right hand went to her neck, checking her wrist. It was still beating. He closed his eyes for a second. Then it opened again. This time his gaze had changed. It was no longer the look of a worried father. It was the look of someone who had seen violence before, that he had already faced her, who knew exactly what happens when you cross certain boundaries, and someone had crossed it. With his daughter, he took off his own coat and covered her body carefully. Then he got up. He turned slowly to the group of students still standing there, watching in silence. No one looked away this time. No one succeeded. Who did it? His voice was low, controlled, but it carried a weight that made the air heavier. Silence. He asked again, slower. Fez. Right. If it was your daughter there, could you keep your cool? Comment there. A whisper ran through the group, low, almost inaudible. But it was enough. It's her father. The phrase spread fast, by word of mouth, from look to look. Some frowned, trying to understand. Others just watched the man standing, motionless, waiting for an answer that no one had the courage to give. A girl further ahead widened her eyes. She had seen that face before, not in person, but somewhere. Movie screen, poster, trailer. She pulled her friend's arm next to her. Wait, that one over there isn't. Her friend looked. It took 3 seconds. Then her expression changed. No, it cannot be. But it was. Another, older student took a step back. He knew the face. He knew the posture. He knew the way the man moved. Firm, collected, like someone trained to keep calm even under extreme pressure. Mike Tyson. The name was not said aloud, but everyone knew now. The silence became thicker, heavier, as if the air had suddenly thickened. On the other side of the parking lot, hidden behind the school bus, one of the bullies peeked in. She saw the man kneeling next to the girl. She saw the coat covering her. She saw his face. And he did. His stomach sank. His legs locked. The mouth dried up instantly. He turned to the other two, who were still leaning against the brick wall, trying to look invisible. We screwed everything up, he whispered, voice trembling. Huh, what are you talking about? One of them replied, annoyed. That one over there. He pointed, his hand trembling. That's Mike Tyson. The second bully took. Then his face lost its color. The third, the one who had pulled the girl's hair, just closed his eyes and leaned his head against the wall. The arrogance was gone. The smile was gone. What was left now was only fear, pure, raw, undeniable. They had chosen the wrong target, not because he was famous, but because he was exactly the kind of man who wouldn't let it go, the kind who didn't need to scream to be heard, the kind who didn't need to threaten to be taken seriously. Tyson remained stationary, watching, waiting. He knew that someone there had seen it all. I knew that someone knew who had done it, and he wasn't going to leave there without answers. True strength does not need to announce itself. It just needs to be present. And in that parking lot, surrounded by dozens of silent witnesses, his presence changed everything. Fear had changed sides. Tyson ducked again, this time, more slowly, more careful. His hand went to his daughter's forehead. He pushed away the strands of hair stuck to the dried blood. His fingers trembled slightly. Just for a second. Then he controlled them. He checked her breathing again, weak but constant. He put 2 fingers on his wrist. Beat. Irregular, but it hit. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened it again, there was something different there. It was not uncontrolled fury. It was something deeper, more dangerous. It was the conscious choice not to act on impulse. He knew what his body could do. He knew what his hands were capable of doing. Decades of training, decades of discipline, decades of learning exactly where to hit, how to hit, when to hit. But he also knew what happened when anger ruled. And there, kneeling next to his unconscious daughter, with blood on the asphalt and dozens of witnesses around, he made the most difficult choice. He chose not to take revenge. Mike Tyson took his cell phone out of his pocket. He dialed 911. His voice came out firmly, without hesitation. I need an ambulance. Jefferson College. Side parking. My daughter was assaulted. She is unconscious. It has a cut at the temple. Weak breathing. He hung up. He put his cell phone away. He stood still for 3 seconds, looking at her. Just looking. His fists clenched, slowly, until the knuckles turned white. The jaw locked. His shoulders stiffened. His whole body prepared for something he knew he couldn't do. But control won. He always won. On the other side of the parking lot, a teacher ran out of the side door of the school. He saw the scene. He saw Tyson. He saw the girl on the ground. She stopped, hand to mouth, and then ran to them. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. Tyson didn't look at her. He just nodded at the group of students. "Ask them." The teacher turned around. He looked at the still, silent faces, all avoiding eye contact. "Did anyone see anything?" Silence. She raised her voice. "I asked if anyone saw anything." Mike stood up. Slowly, he looked at the group. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence was more eloquent than any threat. 2 more teachers came running, then a security guard, then another. The scene began to fill with adults, of authority, of responsibility that should have been there from the beginning. He took a step back, not because I was giving up, but because now there were official witnesses. There was protocol. There was a law, and he was going to use all of that. In the distance, the sound of sirens began to rise. Ambulance, police, justice coming. But there, standing next to his daughter, Tyson knew that the real battle had not yet begun. It was just being postponed. The ambulance arrived 3 minutes later. 2 paramedics came down quickly, with stretchers and equipment. Tyson walked away, giving space. He watched every move, every check. Every technical gesture is efficient. They put a neck brace on her. They checked the vital signs. They asked questions that he answered in a firm, controlled voice. Then they lifted her up carefully and placed her on the stretcher. She was still unconscious. He accompanied him to the ambulance. He stopped at the back door. He turned. He looked back at the parking lot, for the students, for teachers, to the security guard who had finally appeared. And then he saw it. 3 boys trying to get away, discreetly, walking slowly towards the side gate, shoulders hunched, heads down, trying to disappear in the middle of the confusion. Tyson didn't scream. He did not run after them. He just pointed it out. "Those 3, he said, a low but clear voice. It was them. All eyes turned. Teachers, safety, students. Everyone looked at the 3 bullies, now frozen in the middle of the road, realizing that they had been identified. One of the teachers advanced towards them. "You 3, here. Now." They hesitated. The one who had pulled the girl's hair took a step back, as if to run, but the security guard was already blocking the exit. I had nowhere else to go. Mike climbed into the ambulance. He sat next to the stretcher. He held his daughter's hand, cold, small. He squeezed lightly, as if to remind her that he was not alone. The doors closed. The siren turned on. The ambulance left. But before he turned the corner, he looked out the back window. He saw the 3 being taken inside the school. He saw the crowd still standing there, watching. He saw the parking lot lit by the red and blue lights of the police car that had just arrived. Justice. Not revenge. Justice. Inside the school, the 3 bullies were taken to the boardroom. No more laughing. No more confident. Just scared. The principal received them standing, arms crossed, expression harsh. They sit down. They sat down. None dared to look at her. "The police are on their way. You will give testimony. Your parents have been called. And depending on the girl's state in the hospital." She paused, letting the weight of the sentence fall on them. "You may be facing criminal charges." The first bully bowed his head. The second began to tremble. The third, the one who had pushed the girl, just looked at his own hands. It was at that moment that the truth hit. It was no longer a joke. It was no longer mockery. It was no longer something that could be forgotten the next day. It had become real. It had become a crime. It had become a consequence. Outside, students began to disperse, some in silence, others whispering. But everyone knew. Fear had changed sides. And now, the truth had a face. He had a name. There were witnesses, and above all, there was justice. The hospital was 6 kilometers from the school. The ambulance cut off traffic with an open siren. Tyson didn't take his eyes off his daughter. He watched every breath, every involuntary movement, every second that passed without her opening her eyes. The paramedics worked in silence. They checked pressure. They adjusted the oxygen. They wrote down data. One of them looked at Tyson, offering a minimal nod of reassurance, but he needed no comfort. He needed answers. The ambulance stopped at the emergency entrance. Doors opened. Medical staff waiting. The stretcher was quickly removed, taken inside. Mike followed, but was stopped by a nurse at the door. "Sir, you'll have to wait here. Let's take care of her." He stopped. He looked at the nurse, then to her daughter being taken down the hallway. I wanted to continue. I wanted to be by her side. But he knew that now he no longer depended on him. Then he just waved, and he stood there, in the cold, white hallway, watching the double doors close. Back at the school, the boardroom was full. The 3 bullies sitting in separate chairs, 2 policemen standing, open notebooks. The principal next to her, arms still crossed, and the parents, 3 couples. They all arrived in the last 10 minutes, all with different expressions. One parent was visibly angry, not with the child, with the situation. This is an exaggeration. It was just children fighting. The policeman looked up from the notebook. "Sir, the victim is unconscious in the hospital. This is not a fight. This is aggression." The father opened his mouth to answer. Closed. He said nothing more. The mother of the second bully was crying, not sadness, of shame. She looked at her son, sitting with his head down, and something in her broke. "How could you?" Her voice came out weak, but heavy. "How could you do that to someone?" The boy did not answer. She just squinted, trying to hold back her own tears. But he couldn't. They came. Silent. Desperate. Too late. The third bully, the one who had pushed, was sitting alone. The parents had not yet arrived. He stared at the floor, hands shaking, breathing ragged. The policeman approached him. "Do you understand the gravity of what happened?" Silence. "Look at me." The boy looked up, red, swollen. "If she doesn't wake up." The policeman left the sentence in the air. It didn't have to end. The boy understood. At the hospital, Mike Tyson was sitting in the waiting room, alone, hands clasped, stare at the door where her daughter had been taken. A nurse approached. "Mr. Tyson." He stood up immediately. "She's stable. There was a concussion. We are doing imaging tests to check for internal bleeding, but vital signs are improving." Mike breathed, profound, long, as if he had held the air since he got into the ambulance. "Can I see her?" "In a few minutes, as soon as we finish the exams." He nodded. He sat down again, but this time, something inside him had adjusted. She was going to survive. And now he was going to make sure that those responsible faced everything they deserved. Back at school, the case was already spreading. Messages, social networks, parent groups. The news spread quickly. Mike Tyson's daughter assaulted at school. 3 students detained. Victim hospitalized. The silence of omission was over. Now, everyone knew, and everyone would have to choose a side. The news spread before the end of the day. WhatsApp groups exploded. Timelines filled with comments. Parents called other parents. Students posted distorted versions, then deleted them. But it was too late. The truth had already come out, and the whole city knew. The next day, the school was different. Quieter, more tense. The hallways, normally filled with laughter and loud conversation, now echoed only hurried footsteps and whispers. In the classroom of the 3 bullies, 3 empty chairs, immediate suspension. No one commented out loud, but everyone looked at the chairs. Everyone felt the weight of them, what they represented, what had happened, which could still happen. A girl who had filmed the first 3 seconds of the assault was unable to sleep the entire night. He stared at his cell phone, for the video she had deleted, but which was still engraved in her memory. She could have shown it. I could have given it to someone. I could have done something. But he chose not to. And now, lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, the guilt weighed more than anything she had ever felt. At the house of one of the bullies, the mother was sitting at the kitchen table. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He just stood there, hands around a cup of cold coffee, staring at the wall. The son had been locked in the room since they returned from the police station. She tried to talk. He knocked on the door 3 times. He did not answer. She knew what lay ahead. lawyers, processes, maybe even juvenile prison, depending on the girl's condition. But more than that, she knew that her son had crossed a line, and a few lines, once crossed, mark you forever. At the school, an emergency meeting was called. Board of directors, teachers, school board, representative parents. The principal was standing, holding papers that trembled slightly in her hands. We need to talk about what happened. Not just about the 3 directly involved, but about the more than 50 students who were there, that they saw, and that they did nothing. Silence in the room. This is not just about bullying, it's about culture. It's about what we allow to become normal. And clearly, fail. One parent raised his hand. And what is going to be done now? The principal looked at him. Protocols will be reviewed. There will be cameras in the parking lot. Enhanced supervision. And all the students who were present will be called to testify. Not just for the police, but to understand their role in this. She paused. Why testify and not act? It is also a choice, and choices have consequences. On social networks, the case gained strength. Anonymous profiles began posting the names of the 3 bullies, old photos, previous schools, families. Some called for justice, others called for revenge. The line between the 2 began to blur. But in the midst of the digital chaos, a message was repeated, comment after comment, post after post. Where were the adults? Why didn't anyone help? 50 people saw it. 50. At the hospital, Mike was still by his daughter's side. She hadn't fully woken up yet. She opened her eyes twice, confused, frightened, and then went back to sleep. The doctor said it was normal, that the body was recovering, but he knew that some things don't recover with time alone. Fear, the shame, the feeling of abandonment, these things remain. He held her hand, he squeezed lightly, and he promised, in silence, that she would never go through this alone again. Every choice has a price. And now, everyone was starting to pay theirs. 5 days later, she woke up, for real this time. Eyes open, focused, recognizing the place, recognizing the father sitting by the bed. Dad? The voice came out weak, hoarse. Mike leaned forward. He held her hand with both hands. I'm here. You're safe. She blinked slowly. She tried to sit up, but the pain in her head made her stop. He adjusted the pillow, helped her settle in. Then he stood there, just looking at her, making sure it was real, that she had returned. What happened? She asked. Tyson took a deep breath. You were assaulted. On leaving school, he hit his head. He was knocked unconscious. The memories began to come back, fragmented, confusing, but real. The pushes, the screams, the circle closing, the feeling of being completely alone while dozens of people just watched. She closed her eyes. A tear flowed. Nobody helped. I know, Mike said, his voice low but firm. I know. He waited. He let her feel it. He let the weight of that exist between them. He did not try to soften it. I didn't say everything was fine, because it wasn't. But after a moment, he continued. But now they will respond. All of them. Those who did. And those who let it happen. She opened her eyes again. He looked at his father. And then? What changes? The question took him by surprise. Not by doubt, but because of her maturity. For clarity, he thought before answering. Everything, he said, because now people know they can't just look the other way. That silence is also a choice. And that every choice, it has a price. 2 weeks later, the school changed. Cameras installed. Enhanced supervision. Revised intervention protocols. Mandatory training for students and teachers on what to do when they witness violence. The 3 bullies did not return. Ongoing criminal proceedings. Out-of-court settlements being negotiated. Uncertain future. But the most profound change was not in the roles or the cameras. It was in the eyes. Students who had previously swerved now paid attention. Teachers who had previously ignored signs now took action, and the culture of silence that allowed things like this to happen began to crack. It has not disappeared, but it cracked. And sometimes that's all you need. A crack, an entry point, a moment where someone decides they will no longer accept it. Tyson took his daughter back home at the end of the second week. She was still recovering. Headaches, nightmares, fear of going back to school. But she was alive, and I was learning something that most people take their entire lives to understand. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is to act in spite of it. On the night of the return, they sat together in the living room, comfortable silence. He didn't try to give lessons. He made no speeches. He just held her hand. And after a while, she said, "Thank you for coming." He looked at her. He shook her hand lightly. "Always," he replied. "Always." Months later, the girl who had filmed the first 3 seconds reached out to Mike's daughter, apologized, cried. He said he could no longer live with the weight. And his daughter, surprisingly, accepted. Not because it was easy, but because he understood something fundamental. Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone has the courage to recognize it. And recognizing it is the first step to change. Courage is not hitting harder. It's not shouting louder. It is not winning by force. Courage is acting when someone needs it, even if no one else does. It is choosing justice when silence would be easier. It's getting up when everyone around chooses to sit down. And sometimes that's all that separates right from wrong. A choice, a gesture, a moment where you decide not to turn your face. If this story got you thinking, if it reminded you of something you saw, or a choice you had to make, leave the like. Comment on what you would have done in this situation. Share it with someone who needs to hear this lesson today. And if you want more real and fictional stories that mess with justice, family, and limits, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. This helps to bring more stories like this. Thank you for watching until the end. And remember, omission is also a choice.